So this book covers some of the heaviest and most intense and most powerful topics that you can possibly cover in a book. So just a trigger warning: if basically anything at all really upsets you, sexual abuse, suicide, domestic violence, anything like that, then just be warned that this video is going to contain a lot of it. This is Fang Chi's First Love Paradise by Lin Yihan. This book was very difficult to get through, and this video is going to be very short. I think it's going to have to cover a lot of really difficult topics, and I'm not going to get too much into them because I think the book does that. I don't need to get into it, and I don't have the ability to get into it like this book does. I guess the purpose of this video is to sort of give you my feelings while I was reading the book and to give you a sense of what the book is about, in case it's something that you might like to read, or maybe it's something you did read and you just want to hear someone else share their point of view on that book. So a bit of meta knowledge, which really impacts the book itself. The author, Lin Yihan, committed suicide shortly after the publication of this novel. Now, from what I understand, this has never been proven. It's only speculation, but it seems like a lot of the topics and experiences covered by the characters in this book were experiences that the author herself went through as a child growing up. And that's what led to her eventual suicide as soon as this book was published. So I read this book as if it's a suicide note. Whether that's right or wrong, I think it makes it a lot more impactful. So the topic of child abuse, child sexual abuse, rape of children. I talked a bit about it during the video I did on Nabokov's Lolita. And that book is from the point of view of the perpetrator, of the evil man, not of the victim. And it's written by someone who has no experience on either side of that topic. This book, written through the point of view of both the perpetrator and the victim, as well as points of views of other characters, and is written by a woman who, again, never been outright proven, but it seems like she did experience these things. And so I don't think you can get a more true representation of sexual abuse and sexual assault than something like this. Of course, everybody's situation is going to be different, and everybody who has experienced something like this, or different degrees of something like this. I don't know if degrees is the right word, but everyone's going to have different experiences. So this isn't sort of the one and only quintessential experience that everyone would have gone through, but I think it is a real one, even though it is a work of fiction. So like I said, there are multiple points of view. The book does a very strange thing, which I haven't seen before, but throughout a single section or there aren't chapters, but without page breaks, paragraph to paragraph, we sort of jump in between the points of view of various characters, almost like a camera whipping around a certain scene where you see something from someone's perspective, and then you're also hearing what this other person's thinking before we shift back to a third character, and it does jump around a lot. It was written originally in Mandarin and has been translated into English just recently. It was first published in 2017, so it is pretty modern. I've read references to the Me Too movement surrounding the time that this book was published, but I wonder if because of the translation that's why it feels the way it does. But it does sort of feel, I don't want to use the word manic, but it jumps around a lot and it messes with your mind, and but it really has the effect of making you feel what these characters are feeling, that are losing themselves or have lost themselves. And yeah, like I said, I read this very quickly to try and get through it, even though I have no experience with anything like this. I had kind of the best childhood you could possibly have. And I said this again in the Nabokov book, but to me, a child themselves, and also a child's experience, the experience of childhood, is sort of the most precious things that we have in this universe. Experiencing childhood should be the time of your life, and I know it isn't for a lot of people, but it should be the one time where you're free of worry and concern for the most part, and you can experience joy and experience new things and even failures and grow. And it should be a time when you're safe, when you are safe to make mistakes, and is safe to try new things, and safe to experience different things. And to have that taken away from you, or to willfully take that away from a child, there can be no greater evil. And also the potential that a child has is infinite. We have no idea what a child is going to do or be like in their adult life, and that could be they could be a wonderful person, and they could multiply their sort of happiness 10 times, and they could find cures for cancer, or they could help a friend, and any just the potential is limitless. And causing harm to a child that is intentional and is so severe that it will be lasting for the rest of their life, to the point of even destroying their life, or if not their life, then destroying their soul, there there can be no greater evil. And doing so for the only purpose of your own sort of personal carnal pleasure or satisfaction, just to me is beyond reprehensible. It's an evil that just cannot be described. And throughout this book, you sort of lose faith in humanity, and the characters in this book, they sort of say that the world is a wound that has grown larger than the world itself, and that it does feel like there's sort of no good in this world, and this world that supports and allows these people to do the things they do. It's very disheartening, to put it mildly. So it's split up into three parts. There's Paradise Lost, and Paradise Regained. The first part is very small. It's Paradise Lost. It is kind of an introduction. It's talking about these two young girls, Si Chi and Yi Ting. Apologies for the pronunciation. I don't really know much about Chinese pronunciation or Taiwanese pronunciation. I'm just trying to pronounce it phonetically. But it's about these two girls they're described as soulmates again and again, and not like a sort of a romantic, although maybe, but they are basically twin souls. They are not sisters, but they could be twin sisters. And it describes how they are, I wouldn't say mature for their age, but they're really into literature, and they're really into sort of higher intellectual things than their peers. And it talks about how they're very well to do. Everyone in this book is I would say upper class, and how this first section of the book is very short. It's just sort of describing the relationship of these two girls, and how they go off to high school together, and how at the very end of this section, one of the girls, Si Chi, she reveals to Yi Tin that, hey, she refers to herself as Teacher Lee's girlfriend. And Teacher Lee had been this guy that lived in their building, and he sort of helped them out with essays and writing and whatnot. And he also sort of worked in Taipei, so he would look after these girls when they were in Taipei. And Si Chi finally reveals this when they're in high school, when they're finishing high school, that, hey, I've been in this sort of relationship with Teacher Lee. And Yi Tin is totally disgusted by it, and says so, that's you, like, you did all these things with the teacher, like, what is wrong with you? And the next thing we know is Yi Tin gets a call, and they found Si Chi out on the mountain, and she's lost her mind, and she ends up in a mental ward, in a sort of an insane asylum, basically. And that's the first sort of very short introductory, almost chapter to this book. It basically explains the entire events of this book, but from the perspective of Yi Tin, not from the perspective of Si Chi. So we don't know what Si Chi went through, but you can read between the lines and figure out, something with her and the teacher has happened, and it's caused this complete mental break in this young girl. Then we get to Paradise Lost, which is the main chunk of the book. It explores and follows Si Chi's life from the time that she's 13 in middle school, when she is first raped by Teacher Lee, and the following 5 years of this perpetual rape over and over and over again. And again, I'm not going to get into detail, but they do a great way of describing just how utterly lost she is, and how her soul leaves her body each time this happens, and how she sort of, the first time it happens, she apologizes to him, her predator, because she feels like she didn't do it right, or she didn't really know what she was doing, because she's a 13-year-old girl, and this man is 37 years her senior. And you just sort of, your heart gets broken over and over and over again as stuff is described, and she sort of, Si Chi describes herself as she stopped growing up at that point, or she stopped growing. She never developed normally like an adolescent. She all her development and everything froze and stopped at that instant when her soul was first ripped from her body. And this section goes right up until she's 18, and the final climax when, I mean, it's not even a climax, the final intense violent rape in which she's tied up and used. And she says that's the final time her soul left her body and it never returned. And that's when, again, there she's found in the mountainside and taken to this hospital where she presumably lives out the rest of her life. She's sort of conscious and can interact, but on a very surface level. And her sort of personality and everything is so either locked away or destroyed that the Si-Chi, she's not there anymore. She's kind of has passed on. And if that's not bad enough, we get the POV of the perpetrator, this predator, this evil man. And the whole time he's telling this little girl that he's doing this because he loves her. It's the way he shows her that he loves her. But even that is a lie, because he has been doing this for 30 years with various different girls. So he's a teacher at a cram school, and he even jokes with the other teachers. They're all seeming to do this, is that every year a new batch of kids come in and they sort of have their pick from these kids and use these and abuse these children. And even one of the female sort of heads of the school facilitates this. I mean, every Epstein has their Maxwell, I guess. And this man he's been doing this with so many different girls, and he's even has, while he's abusing Si-Chi, he has this other girl, an older girl, that he's abusing at the same time. And eventually, at the end of this book, when you think a resolution is coming, this other girl finally gets the courage to tell someone about this and posts online about, hey, this teacher did this to me, like, this is wrong. And she tells her family, and she tries to reach out for help. And of course, what happens? Well, everyone online who sees it assumes, oh, they're trying to slander this man or blackmail this man, or they're mocking her for being like a slut or a whore, or assuming she took money for it, or basically blaming the victim. And her family, must be a Taiwanese thing, but her family sort of, they kind of blame her as well and are sort of ashamed of her and what sort of she's done to the family. And they actually meet face to face with this man, the teacher, and his wife. And so the wife, this is the first time she's hearing about this, even though this has been going on. Her husband's been doing this for years, decades, with other little girls. And he, of course, later complains that she seduced him and it wasn't his fault. And it happened one time, and he's so sorry. And he's such an awful person, and poor him. So, of course, his wife pities him and forgives him. And so he gets away with it scot-free. And does he stop abusing girls? No, he doesn't. At the end of the book, he reflects on what he did to Si-Chi, and then he starts saying the name of this other girl over and over again, so that he won't get her name mixed up with all the other hundreds of girls that he's abused. And goes into the bedroom to destroy another soul. And like this meeting between the two sets of the teacher and his wife and the parents of this girl, and the girl's there as well, and they sort of, no resolution, or there's not even any anger at this man. Like, if I had a daughter and I found out that something like this happened, what can I say in a YouTube video? I would be in jail for the rest of my life because of the actions I would take. I wouldn't like be ashamed of what she did, and I wouldn't be like, you dishonored the family, and like, how are we going to cover this up so that other people, like, maybe it's a societal thing, but I don't know. It's just, this whole book makes you just weep for humanity, and it almost made me feel that even sexuality itself was wrong, and like, we should just all stay separate and single and use in vitro fertilization to carry on the human race. And I don't know, because not just was this whole book about this horrible abuse of this little girl and this old man, there's also another story about this young woman in her 20s and her husband, who, they're very wealthy and they get married and they seem very happy, and she's connected to the girls in that she sort of looks after them and is sort of, she's close to them, kind of like an aunt to them, or even an older sister maybe. And this story of her relationship with her husband, who is an alcoholic, and whenever he drinks, he abuses her physically. He beats her, and it culminates in her getting pregnant, and he promises to change, and he keeps promising to change. And they're going to have this baby together, and they sort of revitalizes their marriage, and everything seems to be going better until, of course, one night he gets drunk when she's like well along in the pregnancy, and beats her so much that not only does she lose the baby, but she almost bleeds to death. And it was only the fact that he woke up in time and was able to take her to the hospital, a hospital that his family like either owns or donates a lot of money to. So of course there's no repercussions for him because he's wealthy. And that she survives. She would have died otherwise. And she does eventually break off the marriage with this man, and he makes attempts to get back into her life and tries to like say, you know, I'll change, I'm so sorry, I love you, whatever. But she eventually manages to keep away from him. But she still has all this trauma. I mean, naturally, she's going to live with this trauma for her whole life. And throughout the whole book, she can sort of see that something's wrong with Sichi, and Sichi sort of knows what's going on with her and her husband, but they never really outright say it until it all sort of comes out at the end of the book. And then she really blames herself for what happened to Sichi and how she could have helped her. And there is sort of a positive romantic relationship in this book between Ewen, this woman who was beaten by her husband, and this Mr. Mao Mao, this jeweler who I don't know if she falls in love with, but he's been head over heels in love with her ever since he first met her at his store, and he's realized that she's married, and so it broke his heart, but you know, he carries on, and then he eventually sort of moves in with her just to sort of look after her. They don't sleep together. Again, sort of he gets jealous, but he apologizes for his jealousy. I don't want to I don't know what it says about me, but I really related to this character, and I really saw myself in this Mao Mao guy who, you know, he's not the dreamboat, but he's just sort of a guy working at this shop with his mom, and you know, falls in love with this super beautiful, super rich woman who, I don't know, I really liked him. That was sort of the only thin silver lining in this whole book. And they sort of end up together, I guess, in the end of the book. I don't know to what extent they're together, but at least they sort of have each other to some degree. And if this book wasn't hard enough, at the very end, the final section, The Paradise Regained, it's a dinner party with all these people, the abusive husband, the sort of parents of Yitin, one of the girls, not the one who was abused, but the other one, sort of all these members of this large apartment building, condo building, whatever. Fang Sichi, her parents have sort of left because they've sort of been embarrassed about what happened to their daughter. Yeah, it's just sort of a scene showing that life goes on, and these evil animals, these evil perpetrators of the worst crimes in humanity continue to live their lives, and they maintain their social lives, and everyone sort of knows that something went on, but it's sort of embarrassing and they don't want to talk about it. So teacher Lee and this Ewen's husband, they maintain their status and position and continue to abuse and perpetrate these crimes against these people. So the whole book is a sort of, not a critique, but just a tearing open the door or ripping the window off and shoving your head into the house that is society, and how it allows these things to happen and how it's set up to sort of protect those who are the perpetrators. Sichi's story gets out because she had written a diary and explained everything, and Yi Tin comes across it and reads the diary, and she sort of understands what's been happening these past 5 years. But it's rough. It's a rough book. But I think it's important that people read it. I think we should not ignore things like this and be like, oh, it makes me uncomfortable, and oh, I don't want to read about it, I don't want to know about it, oh, it's going to ruin my day. I think you should have your day or week or even month ruined just to be aware that these things have happened and continue to happen to people. And if we are aware of that, maybe we can be more aware of the signs that this is happening, especially myself as someone who works with young children, to sort of have some understanding that because we have never experienced these sort of things and never will, doesn't mean that they don't happen and they aren't a part of our society and a part of our world. And of course we don't want them to be, but we need to be aware that they are, so that we can do things to stop them from happening, or to help people who have been through these things, or to help bring people to justice that have caused these things. There's so much more I could say about this, and so many things, like how it's called First Love Paradise, how Fang Sichi, she sort of says she's in love with this man, and maybe is in a way, and how she sort of refers to this experience as her first love paradise, as a coping mechanism, because this is all she knows of love, and it's all she ever will know of quote unquote love. And just a horrific story, but an important one, that this has happened and it will continue to happen until we can, as a society, do whatever, and I don't have the answers, but do whatever we can to stop it from happening. The domestic violence and the exploitation of children. So yeah, Lee Yin-han, she passed away soon after she published this. She was my age at the time, just in her mid-20s, had just got married. I don't know, I have to think that she experienced this, and that's how she was able to write it. The language itself is very, very poetic. I don't know if it's because it's the Mandarin and it's just a poetic language full of sort of metaphor and interesting turns of phrases and idioms that translate very interestingly into English, but I'll just read you a couple lines. Like, the expression on Mao Mao's face was like that of a basket of mint candies that anyone could take from at the front of a barbecue restaurant. Like, what a metaphor. Like, what a strange thing to compare as an expression on someone's face to a specific mint candies on a front counter in a barbecue restaurant. Like, it's such a complex way to evoke the emotions on this man's face. This line, just a couple lines down. Yuen looked at Mao Mao like she was staring into an ocean. I want to shout into the water, like that Japanese romance movie we used to mock. I want to cup my hands round my mouth and scream my name into the sea of your eyes. Like, there's lots of lines like that are just incredibly beautiful, and it again breaks your heart again, thinking if this woman would have lived and would have continued to write, what sort of works of art and literature could she have produced that are now lost to us? But yes, that is Fang Xiqi's First Love Paradise by Lin Yihan.